Morning, Sal.
Hi, Ben. Realized I was muted when I said that.
How you doing?
Okay. You have some time later today? It's tight, I know.
I do around 2 o'clock.
Okay. I'll make a note.
Maybe
Maybe give you a call. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. Give me a call at 2.
Okay.
Kind of a hectic week.
Yeah. Yeah, I started the week with grandchild care Monday and Tuesday. So
There you go.
talk about a hectic week. Yeah.
Stephanie.
Good morning.
Hi, Stephanie. Good morning, Adrian.
Morning, Adrian.
We're all here. It's 8:01. I will call the meeting to order. Good morning. Approve the agenda. Looks like everybody approves. General business and appearances. Time for public comment. Is any member of the public who would like to be heard and make a comment? Peter? Is Peter here?
Yeah, no, not at this time. I don't know what the agenda is. I'm just listening, but for now.
Okay, thanks, Peter. We're going to go over the Q&A for the developer participants and the communication plan. That's the main objective of today's meeting. And why don't we go there, Stephanie?
Yeah, let me share my screen. I would like to just have concurrence and reminder for everybody involved and everybody listening or watching later about the schedule we're on. And then I can give you a little update on what I've heard since our last meeting last week too, before we get into the comms plan and the Q&A.
Yeah, great.
So this is just a reminder here to on subcommittee and anyone watching and listening that yeah, the RFQ went out on the 27th. The site visit was on the 6th. We had about 20, I think it was like 20 attendees without any staff or the counselors. So we had then follow-up questions from folks. We collected all the questions that were on site. That was the questions were due on Monday. And now we're in this meeting to review the questions, brainstorm responses, and we are going to get those questions back out to anyone who participated and who received the RFQ, and it'll go on the website by the end of the day tomorrow. On the 21st, which is next Friday, the quals are due, so folks will be submitting qualifications and expressions of interest. I will gather those and distribute them to the subcommittee. in some package form to be determined. And at our meeting that morning, though, we will review the RFP, the draft RFP that I'm putting together now. We'll have to you before that meeting so that we can have a substantive conversation about what's in the RFP. On the December 3rd, we will discuss the qualifications, and we most likely will need a matrix, as we discussed at our last meeting. I think that is a good call to have one if there's more than one submission of interest, and I believe we will have that. So I will propose a matrix based very closely on the selection criteria we already outlined in the RFQ. And then on December 10th, that'll be our last subcommittee meeting that's scheduled so far to just finish up our conversation about the qualifications and vote to send the list to full council for approval. And that approval will happen on the 17th, with then all the RFP recipients being identified and the RFP going out on the 19th. I'd like to just pause there, Sal, in case anybody
Yeah,
has.
so it looks like, so we'll actually approve the RFP on the 21st, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Mhm.
If there's further questions or edits we need to do, we have until the 19th. So I suggest that we just have it as a conversation. The December 3rd and December 10th, meeting purposes, I think could be a little bit, they're loose right now, so that you could do some more edits to the RFP.
Some revisions, yeah. Okay,
yeah.
Great. Any other questions from anyone on what Stephanie's presented? So you're saying 20 individual developers were represented at the site visit? No.
Well, 20 people, and
20
some of those
people.
were multiple representatives.
Oh, there were. Okay,
in the
I had
entire-
it the other way around. Yeah, it seemed like there weren't quite that many. Yeah.
Yeah, so it could be, a total of 5 developers represented there. I don't know, or development teams represented. We don't know all of their interests or their teams yet. So not everybody who attended is a developer themselves.
Yeah, okay.
So to that end, I will, I'm going to stop my share here in a moment. So I'm just going to highlight, well, I'll come back to these points on the Q&A. As long as we're on the topic of the site visit, I wanted to update you on interest. We've gotten lots of good questions, a few people telling us they will be submitting qualifications. We have had several say they are not interested in submitting or not able to. So what I'm doing is then noting and asking them follow-up questions about why, so that we have an understanding, and I'm putting that all together in a summary. I'm not going to cite individual developers and why their reasons for not participating, but I will be summarizing it back to the community and to this committee as well to let you know why. And right now, the majority reason is capacity. People that have just said, I'm sorry, we don't have the timing is everything. So that's not surprising. There's been a few other pieces of feedback that it's a big project, it's a complicated project, and it's a complicated place. So that has been communicated back by more than one, that it just combined with their own lack of bandwidth and capacity. So
was there any sense of whether they were looking at the entire 20 acres or?
Haven't heard that. Haven't heard that. It really, and yeah, from a capacity standpoint, anything was too much right now for them. But I did get two separate entities that said, is there potential for later? And because it's a not now for them. And I said there is no guarantee, because we don't know what will come up. Because if somebody came to us with a proposal for all 20 acres, we want to leave that open. But it's good to hear that somebody's very interested. They're just not able to right at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get right into start with the comms plan. We discussed it last week. I'm going to share my screen here. This is loosely based on what we discussed. Well, very much based on what we discussed, plus with some additions. So And I have to disclaim that Evelyn was not around to help with style or like formatting or anything. And I don't know how to say it, Kelly. I don't have the authority to say that this is official yet, but it's our draft and the intent is there. So, so I did this in my own format, which is just, reiterating what we talked about last week, which was that the goal of this communications plan, and this communications plan is not only a living document, but I expect this would outlive the next 5 meetings we have scheduled. This is meant to be added to and continued throughout the work of the city's work at CCR. So we should continue to evolve this as we go. But the purpose that this subcommittee has set out was to really maintain transparency combined with education and really focus on making sure everybody knows what's going on, when it's happening, and how they can get involved and why, all of the why involved. So we kind of identified these audiences as the different stakeholders involved, and then we talked about the different channels that we identified last week. So let's go through that part. And this is a draft, so you have it in your inbox with in track changes turned on. So you're welcome to make changes right in that and send it back to me, specifically just me, and not each other. And then I'll incorporate all of them and redistribute it. We're not going to call it finalized. Okay, so this is highlighting kind of the 5 different angles that we identified last week, starting with digital, website, Front Porch Forum, social media. We're going to start, well, we've already started this drip of, I'm calling it a drip. That's maybe the wrong term, but a steady release of the FAQs via Front Porch Forum and social media. I don't know what frequency we should do those. We have probably no shortage of FAQs at this point between the FAQ and the Q&A. Are we thinking in every other day? You have a very active Front Porch Forum. So I mean,
well, I was wondering about that, whether we need to get permission from FPF. They sometimes block people who post too frequently. Does anyone have any insight into that?
If you're a city account, though, as a governmental account, I think you have unlimited.
Yeah, I would think so too.
I don't know, Kelly, if you know anything.
Yeah, run into certainly clear it and just make sure that, I mean, if we're posting, every day, I wouldn't imagine that it would be more than that. And there are some folks that post every day. I think, they may be sort of limiting if it's, getting out of hand. I don't know what their limitations are, but it would seem like it's okay for, what's intended.
I'm friends with Jason Van Dresch, and I'm happy to shoot him a quick email and just ask that
See
question.
what the policy might be.
Yeah.
It wouldn't hurt, Ben, if you wouldn't mind doing that. Okay.
Yep.
I'm also thinking we're initiating these comments, but at a certain point, we're going to need to respond to questions, it seems like, which we probably would just incorporate into another release, noting that we've gotten these questions from folks, not direct responses to individuals. So how are we organized? Is that Evelyn who's doing all that? How is that working staff-wise?
Yeah, so I mean, this would be Evelyn. And so she's the sole person that does that. I mean, for, good reason. So she would be monitoring, and she does monitor the Front Porch Forum chatter. And then with this specific campaign, she would be making sure that, she's responding and collecting the details.
Evelyn does a good job, but in my 30 years of publishing experience, it was always good to have another set of eyes on things before they go out. We ought to come up with some sort of way.
So typically, just for awareness, our practice is that, with press releases, usually Evelyn will draft them and I'll clear them. So, I imagine that we probably would use a similar method here, but certainly if you wanted to add another layer, we could do that too.
I'm happy to play a role, whatever you think is appropriate, Sal and Kelly, because I am working on getting access as well to the Front Porch Forum so I can read firsthand and not have to rely on city staff to forward me every issue that comes out, just because I think it's important that I understand the sentiments coming from the community. and the different questions. And so, like you said, having another set of eyes to just capture any questions that might come out of that. How, if ever, yeah. And I'd be happy to help draft some of those responses too, if it's something a little more nuanced that might need to come out.
Yeah, okay. Well, and as Kelly knows, I'll probably insinuate myself at some point, but it's good to, I think it's just good to have a couple of people looking at these things before they go out. Adrian and then Peter.
Okay, just a couple questions. So I think just thinking about feedback, I don't see that there's, maybe I'm missing it, but like, is there a section in here for like a feedback loop? Right, like a consistent way for our, I mean, I would not rely on Front Porch Forum. Like, I am not on Front Porch Forum. Like, I think we've been missing like a huge audience.
Oh
If
yeah,
we
it's not
just
the
relied
only
on
one.
Front Porch Forum. So if there's like a way to have a feedback loop, I want to get ahead. You know, I don't want to just rely on being reactive to people, but like, is there a way for people to like send comments, send information, ask questions? You know, having that open dialogue with the community, I think is really important. And I don't see,
You
and
mean
maybe
like
I've
a,
seen it in here, but
Well, we
like a
are,
s-
and we will be doing the public forum a little. We'll get down to that in a minute. But what do you? So if they weren't on Front Porch Forum, like you aren't on Front Porch Forum, others aren't on, you know, Facebook or whatnot.
yeah.
Where are you getting that info? Where are you getting your information first? Let's go to the source first.
I mean, I think we got to meet people where they're at, right? So if there's an opportunity to put, I'm thinking of just making this super easy, right? Like if you have something on the website, like an ask, like an icon, like ask your question, but then create like a QR code, put it in like the co-op, put it, in places where people frequent so they know, I feel like this is an opportunity for us to meet the people in the locations where they are and not expect them to come to Front Porch Forum or the city website, but like put like some flyers around town, like go to some events, like, we could divide and conquer and just, there's parent group meetings all the time. Like we can go to like a parent group meeting, we can go to a school board meeting, like we could go, like I just think sitting back and being reactive is not the best approach for this type of project. I think we
okay,
need
well, you're talking about two different things. One is
Yeah.
a feedback loop, which it
Yeah.
seems like the most practical thing is some sort of email address. I mean, people can write letters, I mean, it seems like the best way to do it, if they're not on a social media channel, is a link to the site or from the site where we can collect those questions.
Yeah, it could be a simple
that
form. You can do
feedback.
a simple form. I mean,
Yeah.
it could be a simple form where and then it's all digested into an electronic document. But I mean, the technology is easy. I think the communications, having that QR code for people to share questions, having a place for them to go, I think is the easy part. Like the
Yeah.
technology is not the concern, it's the outreach.
And then the other half was outreach. You were talking about going to meetings here and there to
And letting
communicate with
people
people
know.
and
Letting
answer
people,
questions. Yeah, like district listening sessions and that
yes.
sort
Yeah,
of thing.
Yeah.
So
Can I just ask a clarifying question though? Because I think it's critical is, what are we asking though? Because I'm not clear. What this reminded me of, Adrian, is from 2 years ago doing the master planning process where we were convening these large groups to ask feedback. We had a very specific survey. We had very specific input opportunities. And right now we're asking for the development community to come forward with their ideas. And right now we're asking for, we're trying to get a realistic handle on what's marketable and market feasible and everything that fits, trying to marry the two things, right? So what are we asking of the public right now? Besides, because again, back to the objective of the comms plan, what I heard last week was just inform, keep people up to date on what's happening. And then so I think your point, if they have questions
Yes.
about, okay, all right. So
If they have questions, and I just think this is, I mean, we're like in a delicate phase right? It's like a delicate phase of this project where we're pushing out information, we're sharing information on the progress of this critical, work that we want to accomplish in Montpelier. But I think what we can improve upon is just listening to folks. And I guess what I want to say is I don't want to get 6 months down the road and have like an uproar because like we have this development and like I can just see into the future of what would happen here in Montpelier. So I'm just trying to mitigate those risks and think about how do we bring in the community members? Yeah, so we're pushing out information, we're sharing our timeline, we're sharing all these things, which is fine. We should do that, but I also want to incorporate another layer to this of just, I think the mayor listening session is like one strategy or coffee with the mayor. The districts have their listening sessions, but I think we could be doing more. This is such an important project for Montpelier. I do think we need to go a little bit above and beyond. I don't want there to be like, I just know that there's folks on Galveston Hill Road. They're like, yeah, no, I don't want a development near me. So I think having a targeted approach to like Galveston Hill Road and be like, let's have, just having.
All right, so it's a question of how many channels we pursue.
Right.
There are obvious channels like FPF, probably the Times Argus, which we might have to pay for unless we do, editorials. The Bridge, similar situation. Some people still read Washington World. I mean, print copy. There's lots of channels where we can make an effort. We can't spread ourselves too thin, and as long as we hit the major ones, I think we'll ultimately hear from others. And then the outreach, again, the number of events that we hold, district listening sessions right now, District 3 and District 2 do one. I don't know whether District 1 does one yet, but maybe this is a good time to start that. So we should explore all of those, and we may have to budget for some of them as well. Let me get Peter in here. Peter,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah.
You've been waiting.
Just two quick things. One is
Yeah.
Ben is going to talk to Front Porch Forum. I think just to clarify, when you ask him if you're. I think their limit is they don't want the exact same announcement a lot of times. But if you have new information, the fact that you could send out new information, I believe that's the question to ask, Ben.
Yeah, thank you. No, I was just going to explain exactly what we're trying to do and just see if he sees any issues with it.
Make sure he understands that you're not talking about sending the same exact information out on consecutive days. That's what they don't want.
Sure.
Yep.
Makes sense.
The second thing, I think Stephanie raises a good point, Adrian. There's two different functions here. One is to keep people abreast of what you guys what's happening. The other is a real sort of back and forth, more like what went on several years ago up at when this was first talked about, where you're really looking for input from the community. And I think what you're talking about is the latter. And I think it's good to get ahead of the game, to plan what you're going to do, to really get a good back and forth as developers start coming back with ideas and proposals. So those are kind of two different things. And I think that for the latter, I think you really do want to seriously plan for when that's going to come in. And I think that I'd say two things. One is Sal just mentioned the listening sessions by city council. I think you probably are going to want to do more of those more frequently when you want to hear the back and forth. And the second thing is talk to Montpelier NeighborNet and see if they would be willing to send out a note to the coordinators that they have to actually have a conversation in their neighborhood. I would do it. I'm a coordinator. I would get my people together to have a conversation, and I think there's about 25 coordinators right now.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Good suggestion. We would then ideally we'd want a way to get a summary from the coordinators on what they're hearing. What the what the issues are.
I
Yeah.
don't know whether they would. NeighborNet is trying to be different from CAN and not be seen as, or in fact be a function of city government. It's really for the
Sure.
So I'm not sure that getting the information back from them would be, it would be more like what Adrian's trying to do, is to forestall some kind of reaction. The Galveston Hill is a good example. Some reaction that's kind of explodes.
Okay, well,
That's
yeah,
what happened
well,
with the garage.
we can wait to see how it develops with the NeighborNet and jump in if we need to.
Yeah, okay.
Ben is,
Yeah, just real
Yeah.
quick. I mean, it's minor, but I think we could, I'm pretty confident we could get on Vermont Viewpoint on WDEV. I think like if Stephanie or somebody from White and Burke, in addition to either Jack or Kelly or somebody like that, I think they're always looking for content. And I actually think a lot of
Sure.
people listen. It might actually even be interesting too to think about, could you get somebody from Let's Build Homes to, talk about how Montpelier is an example of what's happening regionally. So anyway, I throw that out there. I think that's just another one that we could pretty easily get on.
yeah, no, it's a good idea. My sense is that right now we're trying to let people know, keep them up to date on where we are in the process. My sense is that when the proposals come in, which will have much more detail, that I'm assuming much more detail than what we're talking about now, and are likely to generate much more interest and many more questions. So I think the ante will be upped once the proposals are in. Stephanie,
So
what do
let's
you
talk
think?
about this again, though, because so let's talk about where there is input opportunity within this process. Remember that, what we did was to buy the property as a whole in 2022, then then have a bringing together of the public to understand where the development could or should happen, and how and what it looked like. And that was the work in 22, 23. And then, basically, 25, there's this, honing further of that concept plan, or broadening actually of the concept plan. And then there's this process of finding a developer and securing a developer. And so the opportunity for public input in this the development procurement process, we had previously identified in two times that there would be opportunity for input. One was when the qualifications were submitted, that those go on the website, and folks have an opportunity to get their feedback to their counselor, or vocalize it at a subcommittee meeting during the public input opportunity. And maybe, I don't know if at the city council meeting, if somebody wanted to participate and share, they could. That's when the subcommittee's recommendation would be voted on by the full council. And then once that's just, selecting the 5 that get the RFP. And then the RFP response, the proposals that come from the RFP will also be shared, what publicly can be shared. And then we had identified that then again, these be posted, and that again, all of the feedback go through the individual counselors who are participating in this subcommittee meeting. So again, I'm not envisioning, we haven't made that clear at all to the development community that there's going to be any kind of more robust public process during this selection. And if we do want a bigger, robust public process as part of the selection process during the RFP, we're going to have to put that right into the RFP. And what is that going to look like?
How
I just think we need to be really clear.
Can I just
Go
say,
ahead, Ben.
I think it's important for there to be robust opportunity for the council to hear from the community about concerns or questions they have about the development proposals. But this is a council, similar to the city manager conversation. It's a council decision. And I think we just need to be really clear on that too, right? Like, I just think we need
we
to be
want to
really
calibrate expectations, right?
Right.
We need to calibrate expectations, because
there's
not a
nothing
fan.
worse than asking people for their opinion when it's unclear about how their opinion is going to be used or what decision-making authority they have.
That's right. So how do we message it out to the community clearly that the times for input, what are the times for input, and that, you know, these will be publicly available for viewing between these dates, and all input is funneled to, I wrote this down, an email address. Kelly, do you remember, do we have a separate CCR email address that's monitored? I don't remember. I think during the process, we always funneled everything through Josh.
Yeah, if we do, it's certainly not monitored at this point. And I don't think so, but I certainly can check.
Yeah, we'll check, but I think, you know, we did everything through Josh so that there was one point of contact, and he was responsible for, you know, receiving all the information. So,
So how does this typically work, Stephanie? What I'm thinking, after we receive all the RFQ responses,
mhm.
and we meet to make a decision. I mean, a lot of the information in there is going to be confidential, and so we're really talking about an executive session to discuss all of that.
Well,
And
the quals most likely won't be.
well, there's financial information, isn't there, in there that they
They
may
just
not
have
want
to
to
show financial capacity at this stage,
Mhm.
which typically won't be too detailed. So I'd be surprised if anyone shared anything that was.
So you think we can do all of that with the matrix and so on in an open meeting, which would be ideal if we could.
Right. I don't know. I think the city attorney should weigh in on this, but the question
Yeah.
is, because you've got two things going on. You've got the developer sharing something that needs to be done in executive session, which we still need to reserve the right that may happen. And, you know, if we want the best people, they may want to provide us with the best information, and the best information might need to be kept confidential for financial purposes. The other is if the city could be disadvantaged by having the conversation to make the selection in an open format. And so I think the city should reserve the right to do that, as it always can, the city council can. So, and I think Kelly and I were going to talk about that in advance with the city attorney anyway. But you know, once we have the qualifications before that December 3rd meeting. So, but again, you know, getting the feedback from the public before the December 3rd meeting will be useful, you know, so that we can continue to, you know, make that part of the conversation. I think that's important. And this is,
Okay.
you asked me what's typically done. This is not at all typical.
Well, and then there's the RFP, you know, when the RFP proposals come in, that's the huge decision, and the same sort of questions apply. Ben, go ahead before Stephanie.
Actually, just Stephanie, I'm wondering if you could flesh that out a little bit more when you say this is not typical. I'm wondering if you could just talk in your experience, what is the typical level of engagement with the public at this point?
There's none. Usually these qualifications
way.
come straight to the staff, and staff may be with a select board appointee as a subcommittee but it's all internal, and they're not considered public meetings because there's no quorum or anything, and it's not an official subcommittee of the select board or anything, or city council. And so it's done internally, and then the staff comes back and reports back to the full body, the council or the board, to give their recommendation, because they're the ones with the expertise. I mean, usually you've got that, you know, you've got our firm plus, you know, staff capacity, staff expertise to make those decisions and choose, you know, with the direction. Now, are they always this complicated? No, you know, sometimes this is a very straightforward, you know, one parking lot, one empty lot, or a tear down that needs a rebuild, and it's going to be 30 units or something. And we know it's going to be 30 units roughly, because that's all the site can afford, you know, fit. And so, you know, it's a little less, but there's still judgment calls to be made. You know, that's the important thing here, is that there's going to be judgment calls to be made, pros and cons of working with specific developers and development teams and what they bring to the table. And so, knowing, you know, it's good to know what the community wants. So I think having this open flow of communication from the community to make clear what some of the sentiments are. Now, what I do want to caution is that just such a small percentage of people are going to participate. You know, people are so busy and they're not paying attention. This isn't on their radar. They care, but they're not going to have enough time or energy to put into a message. And so at the end of the day, I urge this subcommittee, as the ones who have spent the most time on this with the most amount of expertise on this, to be making the decision that is in the best interest of the city as best you can, because I think that, you know, not all voices will be heard. And there's probably voices that won't be represented, that, you know, there's underrepresented people that need, you know, to be spoken for, even if they haven't had an opportunity to vocalize it.
So Stephanie, does everything you just said apply to the RFQ and the RFP?
Yes. So
Okay.
yes, thank you for that clarification, because yeah, you asked about quals, and then the proposals. Yes, during the proposals, it's absolutely going to need executive session opportunities, because we are going to get financials and we are going to get proprietary information that we need to really dig into, and need to be able to ask really hard questions or really sensitive questions that if they were public could violate, you know, the ability of one of the developers to do what they want to do.
So I get that, and I understand that. What what I'm wondering is, it's another situation where we disappear into executive session with a bunch of information that nobody but us has seen, and we come out with a decision. It seems to me that decision has to be, you know, explained and documented in whatever way is possible. How does that typically occur?
Yeah, that's done with the matrix. You know, you're assigning a grade on each of those qualifications based on what you've heard. And so, you know, they have appointed you to be those graders, right? And so you're taking all that information, and some of it you will get in executive session by asking the questions you need to ask. I think about financial strength, for example. That's the obvious one, right? So financial strength, you're going to get proposals that show their pro forma and their sources, and what are their sources, and how are they getting that capital. And you have to ask those hard questions. How are they actually putting in that capital? Okay, do they have a structured LLC? Do they have, you know, partners, investors? You have to ask those questions, and then you're going to assign them a grade 1 through 10, and the public can't know why entirely you gave the grade of 1
Sure.
through 10, but you did, and you did it for partner A, B, and C. So that's how that works. And those matrices, I think, absolutely should come out in public and should be shared at the time of making your recommendation to the full council.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. We obviously need to keep close track of why we decide what we decide.
It's a delicate balance, it really is. And, you know, maybe out of that, there's more than just quantitative, but qualitative notes that come with that.
We've kind of strayed from the communication plan.
No, but it's a good one. And so it really goes back to those timeframes. So why don't we look at, Kelly and I and the team can put together that a little bit more clarity on, and there are times for input, and where, when what are the exact things that are welcome for input when, and make that very clear, not only in this plan, but then obviously in the different channels. And I agree,
Okay.
this question of going on WDV, the when of that is a good one. You know, when do you really want to go? When will you have the most impact, right? And have the most elevation of this item for folks to know. And it might be sooner than later, so that folks know, like, oh, okay, we have those 2 weeks between the time people submit quals and the time that the subcommittee makes its decision, or the council makes its decision. Or a month.
I mean, also to be honest, I wonder, I mean, this is going to be a long road, right? So I wonder the degree to which, like, I mean, just throwing it out there, maybe it's after the developer has been selected, right? To just, you know, share what's happening in Montpelier, right? And continue to build community enthusiasm for the project.
Like you said, they need content. It could be both, just saying.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not that they need content, but I know.
Yeah, no, I mean,
this is exactly the type of programming they want.
actually, I think, yeah, I'm happy to check into that. Like, I know a couple people there, and just see what their interests might be. If that feels like something
Yeah,
people
that'd
might
be
be
helpful.
interested
That'd be helpful, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so
in.
let me go through this because we really do need to get to the Q&A.
Yeah.
Now, the Q&A, I expect we're not going to really get through the whole thing today because it's detailed, but I expect you will have your time to between now and tomorrow to get me a red line. So the subcommittee, okay, so we talked about the digital digest. We talked about maybe doing, let's talk real quick about this bridge in Times Argus potentially. I was thinking, you know, we could do what we did in other communities where we've done a quarter page or column or something that people know to look for. You know, it's one space in the paper every time or every other week, and it's that space where they can look for updates, Q&A, QR codes. Sometimes, you know, again, thinking long term, there's going to be a bond vote eventually, you know, and that's going to be where if people start getting in the habit of checking the paper in that location, it's a nice thing to have. Now, that is a paid, I'm speaking a little, you know, out of turn because I don't know what the budget is and
Yeah.
how much you can maintain that, but that can be a nice thing to do if you have good readership, big readership.
Yeah, I don't know what the total cost of that might be, but I think
You want us to look into that?
relatively small, but it's something we should investigate. I think it's a good idea. A lot of people will respond to that. I think they appreciate being able to go to a particular place in their you know favorite publication to find information, ongoing information.
Okay, we'll look into pricing. I'll talk with Evelyn and come back to you with that. All right, and then the subcommittee meetings, you know, these are another opportunity for input as well as, you know, the feedback loop. And we, you know, are letting folks know, you know, in advance of that. And then posting summaries thereafter. And then Jack, did he agree to this, by the way, Kelly?
Yes, he did.
Oh, good. I had this idea. We had this idea, and then I just hadn't circled back with it. But yeah, you know, to do that, that's done in a lot of other communities too, whether it's on a specific issue or just to kind of understand, you know, just be a listening session. But and then we talked about a public forum at our last meeting. And so we talked kind of early mid-December, and that will kind of depend on what else is happening in the community. It's a busy season, so I think we need to be a little flexible on whether or not that happens. Yeah, how that happens in and around this process of hearing from the public through, you know, through the qualifications. But you know, the other thing I thought would be really valuable to highlight in that is really talk about the demographic data and the housing need. And I know a lot of people know about it, but not everybody. And so maybe it would be useful, a good opportunity to bring in folks to talk about, you know, why the housing is needed, what kind of housing is needed. We know it's housing at every level, but like, you know, what if somebody came in, and I'm not saying anyone has suggested this, but if someone came in with manufactured homes, with mobile homes at this site, you know, those are very affordable and they hit a certain, you know, appeal for a certain price range. So, you know, what does that mean? What kind of need is there in the community for that? So what do we think about this? Are we still in support before
So
the city puts staff time behind it?
This will be around the time the RFPs are due.
RFQs, no, this will be before the short list is decided,
Oh, before the shortlist is decided.
because that's decided on the 17th, and I don't think we
17th,
would do
okay.
it after that. So
Yeah.
I'll just say December's, I know there's no good time for any of this stuff, but December I think is
I know.
so hard. I mean,
know
I
it
just don't
is.
think, I think the time and effort we would put into something like this, I mean, I just
Yeah.
feel like people are distracted generally right now in the world, but I think December would just be so hard to get people to pay attention. That's just my like initial, I know we
don't
talked about the
disagree.
date, but that's just what I just
Don't
think we
disagree.
would be disappointed in the
Yeah.
attendance because no one comes out in December.
So then let's think about the timeline after that. The RFP goes out the 19th after the decision on the short list, and then proposals are due on February 4th. And we don't have a deadline yet on the other end of that. We will shortly have a selection deadline, a selection timeline after February. I want to be careful here that having a public forum once the proposals have been received, again, setting expectations, making sure folks know this isn't a time to workshop what has been received from the developers.
Yeah, that's the tricky,
input.
yeah, that's the line we have to walk. I was wondering, just thinking about communication channels, before I forget, I noticed in my water bill, I got a sheet, an extra sheet. When's the next time water bills go out? And could we?
We could certainly, I mean, so I think the timing might be a little bit off.
Yeah.
Just because, water bills are due in December.
December.
So then the next round would be what, March-ish?
March, right?
But we could put something in December. We could put an update.
Is that the one that just went out?
That's the one that's out.
Oh,
right
that's the one that I just got. I
Yeah.
see, because the bills
Yeah.
are due in December.
That's a great idea, and that's it's definitely a
We did
method
that
we
with-
use. Yeah.
Yeah, we did that.
We don't have anything else like that that's coming up, do we? I mean, that's the,
An existing mailing, you mean?
yeah, existing mailing that we could slip another sheet into. Well, all right, something to think about. I thought I didn't know what the timing would be on that. Okay. Yeah, December forum, I don't know. I mean, I like the idea in general. It's going to be tricky to pull it off at that time of year, and setting
Yeah.
expectations is difficult at a time when we won't have a lot more information than we have now, actually.
I think
That's
it's just
true.
really, oh, sorry, go ahead, Steph.
No. Mm-mm.
I was just gonna say, like, I think it's really important to consistently communicate to people, like, proactively, here's where we are in the process, this is the next step. Please reach out to either staff or city council members with questions, right? Like, I think engaging in that way is healthier, like providing people with the opportunity to ask questions and all those kinds of things. But like, to set up a public forum in December, to me, it does set up these kinds of expectations that we might not be able to meet, right? In terms of people going to a meeting thinking that they're making a decision on a developer, when that's not the case. And so I just think it's really important to be open to like two-way communication, but like not set up an expectation that there's, a public meeting where we're gonna put dots on a wall to pick what we want.
Yeah, no, I agree. Adrian.
All right, I thought I had a totally different vision in my mind for the public forum. Totally different idea. So my idea, what I was thinking in my head, and I think we could do this in January, because this is like an ongoing issue in Montpelier. I think we need to kind of put our sales hat on and think about our audience of like, we need housing. Like this is like an educational like forum where we're bringing in the folks that like Kevin Chu, and like not necessarily related to, I think it is related to this project because I think it's going to help make this project be successful. But I think the talking points are, we need housing. Here is the data. This is what we need in Montpelier. Like we bring in CVMC, we bring in National Life, like we could talk about the housing crisis, and this is an opportunity. We have many opportunities in Montpelier to help solve this issue. And so I saw it maybe not directly tied to RFPs or RFQs, but I think it would benefit this project if we started having those discussions and sharing those data, and having these experts come in and talk to the public, and I think we should do that in a more consistent basis as like a sales pitch.
I think that's a great idea. I like that.
And do you chair the or staff the, I don't know the word, liaison to the housing committee, Adrian? Is that your group? No.
I'm a liaison to the housing committee.
Oh, you are. Okay, sorry. So whoever I was just thinking that seems like something that they would be the most, interested in and want to have big input on, I imagine. So, and are they interested in this? Is that something they think is a good idea? Not that it couldn't happen, I'm just suggesting, because if this is bigger than CCR, I'm not the person to, get involved, start making any decisions on that. So I didn't understand that, Adrian, and I think that's a good point to broaden it, because I think the point, my thing about this recent demographic information is, yeah, focus it on the problem and educating folks who don't necessarily go to all the things their Kevin Chew is, you know, like I happen to be at a lot of those, but not everybody does. And so to understand what kind of housing is needed and why it hasn't happened. Why it hasn't happened is a big one. Like people often ask me, they're like, I see building happening all the time. Why are we in a housing crisis? That's a common question I get. And I'm like, well, it's our housing stock is decaying at a faster rate than we are building it. And we didn't build enough for decades. So
yeah, well, it's and you're talking about an event, I mean, a group gathering, or, I mean, is that the ideal method, or is it just something we continue to do in a push way with messaging?
she was suggesting an event,
In a
like
single
a
event,
forum,
yeah.
still
Okay.
like a summit almost.
Yeah.
But I do want to pause and say that, you know, this is kind of beyond the scope of my work here, and therefore, and also the housing, it sounds like the housing committee needs to be more involved in this conversation. So I don't know where this goes from.
I'm happy to share this idea with Alyssa Sherns, the chair of the housing committee, and happy to share it with her and see where they want to take it.
Will we have the housing needs study by then, and will that be
That's
critical
unclear to
to?
me. We have the draft version of the housing needs assessment that provides the data, but it hasn't been synthesized or analyzed to provide recommendations yet. That's, I think, what the committee's doing. But I think certainly we could use the data to,
Yeah.
you know,
So we have enough that we could use some of that in such a
definitely.
presentation.
Like,
Yeah.
what's the percentage of rental unit, like affordable rental, like all that kind of stuff has already been collected.
Okay. Peter, quickly, if you
Yeah,
can.
very quickly. I think it's a great idea to have that event, and I think the housing committee is the right place. I would add to it, though, one of the things that people do not understand is TIF and CHIP and how that works with their taxes. So it's not just the question of, do we need housing, but what's going to be the impact of my taxes? So when you do this sales pitch, have somebody there who really can clearly understand that. Thanks.
Yep.
Very good point, Peter. Thank you.
He's saying hire me for that.
Yeah.
No, and he's right. I think that's always what I'm like, I'm beating the drum constantly, is that, you know, people don't understand that it does not, you know, it's not a new tax on them. So I think that would be a good thing to highlight, is I'd put that in as a note, any funding source, and how would those funding sources work, and how do they typically work, and give people an education. You know, I like the term education more than sales pitch, but, you know, I do understand the point. It's, yeah, getting the buy-in. It's getting the buy-in because you're really trying to get folks to understand the need and then understand why.
And give them examples at a scale they can understand, you know, as personal a level as possible.
That was pretty much the substance of the comms plan. There was a little bit of a schedule and some evaluation stuff. If you want to send me, I just updated that with our notes. I can circulate that again, the annotated version there. But if you want to send me your additional thoughts and red lines by tomorrow, that would be ideal. So we have that kind of buttoned up for now. And then with our remaining 9 minutes, here's the
the time flies.
It does. So this is a work in progress. As I mentioned, there are comments in the question, or comments in the, oh, I don't know if this is the most recent version. Sorry, hold on a second. Yeah. Hold on, sorry. Oh no, it is. Okay. Yep, sorry. I had 3 different versions of this document. Sure it was up there. So we're still pulling together some of the things we need to cite about some of these questions, but essentially I just wanted to go through the structure with you. I don't have any pride in authorship of how these are sequenced and laid out. They need to be thorough and exhaustive, because the process is you document every question that's asked, and you respond to every question that was asked, and you circulate it widely. So I don't want to I know it's long, but I think it's important that it's long. So, and it's not just important, it's required. So, not every question may be 100% complete too. I mean, there's going to be additional information that folks have to do their homework on. This is really intended, again, remember, this is different than our FAQ. Our FAQ is more public-based, and this is available to the public, but this is very specific to developers and the development community. They're asking their questions that are going to inform how they propose. And so some of it may sound technical and may get technical, and that's appropriate in this model. So just pointing that out. We're not going to have a chance to go through every question, but I can just review them in general, which is, there were questions asked about the infrastructure, how far the scope of the infrastructure went that's currently already planned as part of the funding applications from the city. There were questions about the infrastructure within the site that was on that concept plan, like how long is that road, that loop road that was shown, and bless you. And the questions around LMI, what did that mean? Trying to understand the occupancy of those units required under CDBG.
Stephanie, the question about fit versus demand was interesting to me. I thought, I just wondering how developers understand those terms. Fit to me means the maximum allowable, and demand means, what current needs are. But it seemed like the answer indicated that it could be the other way around. And I just want to I don't need to understand it. They need to understand it when they ask about fit and demand.
Okay, yeah, that's a great question, Sal. Let me relook at the language to make sure that it's readable and it reads the right way. From a couple, I'll ask a few of us to make sure it makes sense. But just so you know, fit is physical fit.
So essentially the maximum, how much will? Well,
yes, except that during the maximum here is like 500. But the community during the CCR, the actual master planning process brought that down. They didn't want to go with the most build out. So
so the reason I'm asking is because I heard some people say, is 300 the limit? In other words, there are folks who are thinking, maybe we can squeeze another 100, 200 units in here. And I don't know what if this answers the question about that.
So that's a good question, because I mean, how bound are you? What are your zoning? Let's say zoning allows 500. I think it allowed up to 500. I think but the buildable areas and the max build out for each buildable area. Oh, good. Mike's going to speak to this too. It, brought it, then the community said, no, we don't want it that big. So 300. So when we say 300 is the limit to the community, to the developers, we're saying 300 was the community's limit. But Mike, I'm curious what Mike had from that.
So yeah, I mean, the limit can go up to the 500. I think with the way the zoning is written in densities, you could have more. I think what was key coming out of the actionable plan was that the 200 was more of a floor, because if we went less than 200, we didn't generate enough increment to pay for the infrastructure, and therefore we would have to go to the taxpayers to fill in the gap. So if we were going to make this, it had to be something above 200, and 200 was like just enough to pay all the bills and walk away. And so at 300, we had enough of a buffer and enough time to kind of fit things in that's why the 292 is kind of healthy. We could build everything out and have $7 million in the bank. So it's like, okay, well that was before interest rates went up. So now, the thought was, well, we've got extra cushion in case something is over budget, or in case we've got this extra cushion. Well, now basically probably that 7 million's been eaten up in increased costs for money. But that was a little bit of, so when we talk about fit, it was like, yeah, this fits, and it also fits our economic goal, which was that we're not going to go and ask the public to subsidize this housing development. This housing project will pay for itself. So I think we'll have to work that in. Apologies, I didn't get a chance yesterday to go and look through these. I'm going to take a look at it as soon as we're off the meeting this morning.
Thank you, Mike. I would like to discuss this a few more minutes, because I would like to avoid anything that limits a developer's proposal. In other words, if they want to make it work with 400 units, I would like to hear that, hear their reasons for that, before, and not just, because I don't know that the community, when they made that decision at 300, were thinking, in it, that they were limiting what would happen long-term on that site. I mean, I could be wrong, but I participated in that process, and my sense was that, people were not thinking that, that far ahead. So I would like to see this answer provide clarity, but kind of leave things open. I don't know what other folks think.
I think it's highly, I mean, Stephanie, I defer to you, but I think it's highly unlikely that anybody's going to say, I'm going to build 500 units of housing right now. Right. And so
agree.
I think like maybe just making it clear that, a target number of nearly 300 units was identified by the community as ideal. I don't know, in a phase one or something like that. But like, I don't remember from the process, did the community specifically say like, we don't want to see more than 300 units up there? That's not what I'm hearing from Mike.
Yeah, I don't know that there was a specific question.
Yeah, there was.
Oh, really?
Wasn't there? I believe when we did this in different phases, we had some concept plans. And at one time there was a concept plan that showed the full 500. And then we brought it, and it was 500. It was like I'm not going to remember this perfectly, but it was like, a big, a medium, and a small, right? Or, those kind of the three different layers, and or densities really. And then there was enough of people that said no to the 500 that brought it back down to the 300. But again, that was done in a process with the community, but not necessarily within market reason, without the market layer of intel and feasibility in there. And it's a different, 2 years later is significant. And maybe we're not talking about 2 years later, we're talking about 4 years later, because really these developers are thinking we're not even going to start building for another year and a half, 2 years. And those things have changed, and the economics have changed.
Yeah.
And potentially the funding sources have changed. When Mike says that about that was a TIF potential, but CHIP is different, a different program, and a different, there's just, so I agree with you, Sal. I'd love to leave it open. I just didn't know policy wise, if you've adopted this. I mean, the newest concept plan does not have quantities on it. Your concept plan from the spring does not have quantities on it. So it makes it clear, makes it better, seem more of an option to put to raise that limit.
Yeah, I was trying to find
another call. Go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I thought in our new memo that we put out, and I haven't had a chance, I was gonna try to pull it up while we were talking, and I couldn't quite get to it, but I thought we had a number that was like a minimum of 300 was what ended up in the May actionable plan. As I thought it had a minimum of, as opposed to, and I don't remember what the number was, but it's worth checking what's in the memo.
It's like 292, wasn't it? That was on the plan originally, like 292.
Yeah, it was in the original plan was 292, but when we did our workshop in May to adopt the actionable plan finally, you guys put together a memo, and I had a memo, and I think in that memo we talked about, rather than a target, I think there's a number in there. We should just check that. I'll check it and get that back to you guys, because I think there's something in that memo about a minimum of this number of units.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
I'm looking at your memo from May 20th, Mike, and one of them just says, despite the places in the actionable plan that explicitly should not include any single family homes, these should remain an option for developers to consider in any mix. So that was on the low side, the low density side, which again, I don't know that that's been very clearly communicated, that some single family homes could be potentially proposed. But yeah, because I did hear this would be more feasible on the site visit. I heard somebody say this would be more feasible if we could do some single family.
Yeah, all I see is create a minimum of 300 housing units. I don't see any cap in the memo, the final memo.
Yeah, I thought that's what I thought. There was create a minimum of, which would means if a developer wants to do more than 300, they can. That was just that's what I thought was in the memo.
So Stephanie, can we revise that then to just say like a minimum of 300 units?
Sure. Yeah.
And then, and I also think to your point of like, just looking at it, I think what we want to say, right, is that we're wide open to a variety
know.
of options,
Yeah.
including single-family housing,
Exactly.
provided we can hit our housing target.
Exactly. That's the way I would like, I'd like to make sure that we don't foreclose on those opportunities.
Got
If they're needed to make it work.
I guess the question then is if anyone else has read this through and has any other questions that merit discussion, because we're kind of out at time and I don't know if there's anything else that out. Okay. Because there's more in this that you're obviously going to need to go through and read for yourself. And it'd be great to have that perspective of that didn't make sense or it's not clear to me, because if you're reading it that way, others will too. So I'd love that feedback.
And you'd like those comments
So I'd like them by
tomorrow?
noon tomorrow, because we
Noon
do need to
tomorrow.
turn this around quickly.
Okay.
I'm not going to apologize because it is just the process. They require the process requires a quick turnaround of questions for the community, for the developers, because they're working hard on getting us stuff. So, but yeah, by noon tomorrow would be perfect, and then I will incorporate them and do a finalization, and then we'll distribute that either by end of day tomorrow or first thing Friday.
Okay, thanks. Is there any other?
Oh, sorry. I do
Yeah.
want to make sure I ask this question. One question came up though that I did not. No, I did include it in the Q&A. Are we willing to extend the deadline for quals past the 21st? Someone
thought
has
your response-
explicitly asked
yeah.
that.
I know. I thought your response to that was appropriate, right? That like people have been, I don't know.
Working toward that.
Yeah, it feels unfair to me. I mean, for the qualifications, that's not that high of a bar,
It's a low
right?
lift.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I think we set a deadline. Everybody knows what it is.
And they're allowed to, team up after. We've made that clear. That was a explicit question at the site visit. They're allowed to, thanks, Adrian. They're allowed to team up after. So if they need to, more time to pull together a team, then they have that time as long as they've put in their, and to be honest too, that's, we may get a proposal from a team where only the lead submitted the quals, and that's also normal. So only one member of their team really needs to submit those quals. So, all right, if you feel comfortable with that as a policy decision, then I'll just include it the way that I did.
Okay, anything else?
And then the last, I'm so sorry, one more question.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I have the list, the attendee list.
We'd love to see that.
Love to see that.
Yes, okay. I will circulate that to the subcommittee. It does not typically go back out to everybody who participated. So I'm not going to share it widely that way. That's not what we usually do. So, but I will share it with the subcommittee so that you're aware of who was there. I think we could probably put it on the website. Honestly, we probably could. I just don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you share it with us, it becomes a public document. So
that's true. Yeah. So it can just go out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Anything else from anyone? Okay. Meeting
Thank you for your
adjourned.
time. Okay.
9:06.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.